Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Coffee and Sports in the Morning. I'm your host, Mr. William D. Morgan. Pulling an audible here. Got my man, my fellow co-host from the Sports Report podcast, my man, 7-7. What's going on? How you doing today, bro?
Oh, man. I have been better after looking at who got into the Hall of Fame for Major League Baseball. I am angrier than a pack of raccoons in a wet bag. I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
Me and Gene, we talked about it yesterday, and you being the baseball aficionado that you are, let me get your thoughts on that Major League Hall of Fame vote.
So first of all, whoever didn't vote for Ichiro, that one person needs to lose their voting privileges.
Yes.
Just hands down. I cannot for the life of me, if we're going to work so hard to exclude the guys from the steroid era that allegedly juiced, which I think is stupid to begin with, but if we're going to exclude those guys,
yes,
but we're not going to recognize the elite production and the guy that became the face of the Seattle Mariners, despite Ken Griffey Jr. being there, you're going to give me, you're not going to vote for Ichiro. Ichiro absolutely should have been the second unanimous Hall of Famer. And then we look at CC Sabathia. For those of you that may not follow baseball as close, CC Sabathia is a pitcher that spent a lot of time with. He played about an 18-year career. I know he spent a lot of time with the Yankees. I can't remember his entire career was with the Yankees. But he did have a career ERA of 3.74. So it certainly could have been. I mean, it certainly could have been worse. Second half of his career was with the Yankees. The front half of his career was with the then Cleveland Indians. He was on the Yankees World Series team in 2009, so he does have a ring. I just, with some of the other talent that was on the ballot, why are you going to give CC Sabathia a nod in his first year of eligibility when he was above average, but he wasn't first ballot good? And maybe that's just because I'm a Sox fan, so people are going to call me a hater.
Yeah.
And you guys can call me a hater all you want. I get it. But he has one ring and a career ERA of, was it 3.74? I think I just saw. I know it was between 3.5. Yeah, 3.74. That's not first ballot to me. I'm not saying CC Sabathia shouldn't have gotten in. I've said since he retired, he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Right.
But I also don't think that he was worthy of first ballot. There should have been on the ballot, the final ballot for this year, there should have been probably somewhere between 7 and 10 players that got it. And I'm not the type of person where I'm going to drag it out too super long. Oh, I didn't like this guy, so I'm not voting him into last ballot. I think that stuff is stupid. Let's recognize talent where it is. And then the third one, Billy Wagner, another pitcher. Most of his career was split between the Astros and the Mets. He did also spend some time in Philly, a little bit of time with Boston, and his last season was actually with your Braves. So a very, and he traveled a little bit. He also had his career ERA was 2.31. So better numbers than Sabathia.
Yes.
He was, I liked Wagner's arm a little bit better. He was
Mm.
really good, especially for a left-handed pitcher.
Mhm.
Um, and he definitely had some recognition. Wagner got in on his last year of eligibility on the traditional ballot.
Yes.
I I don't know that I would have waited that long, but he got his recognition, which I think is important. Great guy, great in the locker room. By everything I ever saw about him, a lot of people liked him, and I don't think. I think one of the biggest. I think the biggest knock on Billy Wagner, and probably why he did not get in sooner, is I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he did not ever win.
He never won a ring, I don't believe.
No, he never won a ring. He didn't do. He got close to a Cy Young a couple of times, but he never got a Cy Young. He was an All-Star six or seven times throughout his career. So he didn't have the accolades, which is I think why his vote dragged out.
Mm.
But if you go back and watch clips of Billy Wagner pitch, you're going to be happy with what you get. Like
Yeah.
he's just a solid left-handed pitcher, cannon for an arm. Great breaking ball. Great breaking ball. I really liked watching him pitch.
Now I said yesterday.
Go ahead.
I think all three are deserving. But Gene brought up a guy I was familiar, but didn't watch a whole lot of him play. Wanted to get your take on this. Felix Hernandez.
Felix
Why would
Hernandez
you
should actually absolutely be a Hall of Famer.
would you put Hernandez over Sabathia in that case?
Probably. Again, some people are going to call me a hater because it's of the fact that Sabathia is a Yankee player, and I don't always rank him as high. But Felix Hernandez did have a better ERA
Mhm.
than CC Sabathia. His career ERA is 3.42. He spent his entire career with Seattle, all one team. He won. He did get a Cy Young in what was that? 02 or 08 or 09. I think maybe it was 2000. I'm sorry, 2009, 2010. Um, there was a stretch where almost every year he was at least in the voting. He got at least a vote for MVP. Used like two, 4, 6, 7, 6 out of 7 year stretch where he was an all-star every year.
Mm.
Felix Hernandez absolutely should be a Hall of Famer.
Mm.
But this was his first year. This was his first year of eligibility.
Mhm.
So because of the fact that he didn't get a ring, at least I don't. Yeah, no, he didn't get. No, he did not get a ring. Because of the fact that he didn't get a ring, I have a feeling that he's going to be similar to Billy Wagner in that it'll be in the back half of his eligibility that he'll get brought in, which I think
Right.
is an absolute crime because he deserves the call.
Right.
I will say, though, I think some of the voters, because when I look at the players that are coming up next year,
Mm.
as far as first year eligibility for next year, I don't think anybody gets a first year ballot next year. I'd have to go back and look at because I saw the names yesterday on Facebook and I don't have it in front of me. But there is a possibility that some of the names that didn't get it this year, they're just holding on to so that they have a little bit better of a class next year because you're not going to see any first year ballots next year. I think probably the best name that's on the ballot next year for first time is Alex Gordon, who used to play for the Kansas City Royals. And if he gets in, it's going to be very late in his eligibility because he was a 257 hitter. But he does have a ring, and he was one of the best outfielders in the game for about 5 years. But he's not even first ballot. So it sucks to see guys not get the recognition, but at the same time, I think some of these guys that didn't get it this year, it's because they're holding it for next year.
Now, one of the guys I was kind of shot that didn't make it, but he should make it next go around. Carlos Beltran. He had 70% of the vote. So he was so close. He was so close.
I think Carlos. I think there's some politics in that one.
Mm,
Carlos Beltran, first of all, absolutely um, should be a Hall of Famer.
mm,
He was actually one of the earlier Kansas City Royals that I remember. Because there was a stint in the early 2000s,
mm.
and this was when I right around the time that I moved to Kansas City for the first time from Arizona. The Kansas City Royals had Carlos Beltran, Johnny Damon, Jermaine Dye, and a few others that would go on to do elite things with other teams. This
Yes.
is one of those stints where Kansas City was essentially a farm team for the rest of them. And Carlos Beltran, even at that point in the early 2000s, before he ended up going to Houston and then to the Mets, where he spent most of his careers with the Mets,
Yes.
he was raking. Absolutely a dynamite player. And he really, just one of the most elite outfielders in the game for his period. So the fact that he's not in yet is a crime.
Yeah.
I will say I completely agree. Carlos Beltran, like I said, there was like 7 to 10 names on this ballot that I would have put in. Beltran was absolutely one of them.
Yeah.
Um, to, he had a career batting average of 279. You know how hard it is to hit 279 over your career?
Mm-hmm. Your whole career, not
Your
just
whole career.
whole career.
That's including all that time he spent with the Mets.
Yep.
You know how hard it is to hit 279 as a Met?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're a fan of that team. You've seen
And
what
in the
they
Mets.
do.
I know. I know.
But Beltran is a ball player. He was just one of those ball playing bros that just loved the game.
Yep. And you
And
saw it every time he was out there. He loved it.
he was, I would say, while the home run numbers were different, because the home run, especially in the early 2000s and in this period that he played, the long ball doesn't have the weight that today's game holds.
Yes.
He was a contact hitter. He got on base, and when he was in the outfield, he flew around that because he had speed for days.
Yep. Yep.
And the fact that he hasn't gotten his recognition yet frustrates me. But this was only like his third or
Third or
third year.
fourth time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say Beltran is probably one of those names that I would expect to get in next year
Yeah.
when the incoming class of newly eligible individuals is a little thinner than maybe other people would like. So especially with how finicky the baseball writers can be,
Yes.
I think this would be the perfect class to see a guy like Beltran get it.
All right. All right. I was sort of kind of upset because I saw my boy. I know it's gonna be a minute for him to get in, but Toy Hunter, I'm waiting on you to get in, bro. I'm waiting on you to get in. That's all I'm doing. I'm waiting on you to get in.
He's another one. Torrey
Oh,
Hunter.
yeah.
I think that Torrey Hunter is one of those when you're a baseball play when you're just a baseball fan, you can appreciate Torrey Hunter. Solid outfielder, another career 277 hitter. His career WAR is over 50. So was Beltran's, by the way. I think Beltran's like 59 or something like that.
Mm.
Stellar numbers as an outfielder. Definitely another guy that should be in Cooperstown for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit to the NFL. We all know the NFL is king, it reigns supreme. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the last game on the docket. Yep, last game on it. Bills Chiefs. Now you're a Chiefs fan. What are some of your thoughts? I'm picking the Bills in this game. What are some of your thoughts?
I think if the Bills are going to do it right now, this is the best chance they've got. Kansas City doesn't. Kansas City makes mistakes. They just don't make them at the worst time, like the people that have played Kansas City. When Buffalo beat Kansas City during the season, Buffalo didn't make mistakes. And it's really hard to play mistake-free football against Kansas City's defense because Kansas City's defense is elite. I think when we look back at this team in 20 years, everybody's going to be talking about how locked down that Kansas City defense is, and for good reason. And that's despite the fact that you have a generational talent in Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. That's how good this defense is. But Josh Allen, it's so far based on what the small sample size we've gotten, Josh Allen is better. So I don't blame people that are picking the Bills in this game based on actual football. Now, people that are just being haters, go drink your haterade.
Now I said yesterday. I was picking the Chiefs yesterday. I did say that yesterday on the show, but I slept on it for a little bit, and I really thought about one thing that's sort of kind of been bothering me a little bit. This has been Patrick Mahomes' worst year, and I think, and I started thinking about it, and I think that if a defense can be opportunistic, and I think the Bills' defense can be, if they can get one or two turnovers in this game, that can make the difference. And I think they'll get those one or two turnovers in this game that can make the difference. I think they'll slow down, but I think they can slow that Bills defense is enough to slow down Pacheco, and particularly covering him out the backfield. So it's just about sleeping on it, thinking about it for a sec. Yeah,
there's
gotta go with the Bills.
I get it, and the thing that worries me with the Bills, as far as objectively football person is concerned, taking my Chiefs fandom out of it, the thing that worries me about the Bills is over the course of this season, they were middle of the pack in both pass and run.
Mm.
This is despite the fact that you have a guy in Von Miller on that line. And Von Miller is still elite.
Very
I
good.
respect the hell out of that guy.
Very good.
If you can get Kansas City to mess up and get, I would say your goal should be at least 2 turnovers, and you have to be leading at the half.
Yes.
If your defense can give you those 2 things, you have a chance to beat Kansas City. Andy Reid has not lost at all this season when ahead at the half.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to beat that. You have to hit that benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, when Kansas, even if the momentum is in the Bills' favor going into the locker room at halftime, if Kansas City's ahead, they've got confidence. You've got to get at least 1 to 2 turnovers. Pacheco is not the problem as far as who you have to worry about on the run. Kareem Hunt is hungry. He is now ankle deep in his redemption with Kansas City after everything that happened in, what was that, 2019?
2019. In the 2018, beginning of 2019.
Right before the Chiefs went to their first Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. He can taste it. DeAndre Hopkins is the closest to a Super Bowl he has been in his career.
Yes.
Those 2 guys are playing with, they've got motivation. Most of the rest of this roster, outside of the rookies, they've been there before. They've tasted it. It's not the same to them. You have to lock down Kareem Hunt because he is clearly right now the best runner in Kansas City's offense. And you've got to take D-Hop out of the game because that's going to be one of Pat's favorite targets, especially because it's supposed to be relatively not bad weather. I think it's like everything I've seen so far is like low to mid 40s, which compared to what they get in Buffalo this time of year, compared to what Kansas City sees sometimes this time of year, that's pretty decent weather. Outside of the worries of the wind, should actually be a relatively decent game or relatively decent weather for football on Sunday in Kansas City. So you've got to interrupt that you got to interrupt Kareem Hunt, and you've got to get on that passing game. You got to try and get Kansas City to start dropping balls again. If you're Buffalo, you have got to be disruptive. Your offense just has to take their time. Don't rush the process. Don't expect perfection because Chris Jones is going to break free.
Yeah, that was
That's
my
just
one. That was my one concern yesterday, and that's the reason why I said KC will probably win the game because Chris Jones is just that's a monster.
he's a menace.
That's
He's
a
a menace.
monster. Oh my gosh, you know that
It's-
line's going to have to contain him.
It's and that's going to be. I think that's truly Kansas City's difference maker. And of course, you've got certain guys that are in that secondary, like McDuffie and Justin Reed, that are going to have an impact. But in that front, you got to watch Chris Jones. You got to shut him down. Luckily for Buffalo, Josh can take the abuse.
He can. That's a big boy too. That's a big boy.
He's a big boy. He breaks out and he runs. He uses his legs better than almost any other quarterback in the league. I know Lamar's got great legs. I know Jaden Daniels got some decent legs if he wants to. But we don't give Josh Allen enough credit for the fact that he has carried that team with his legs for the last few seasons.
Yes.
And if he gets out, if he gets loose, because you got to contain him. Because if he gets out, he's running, and he's faster than Chris Jones. So that means your secondary's got to get off of the receivers and pull back in. And if that happens before he gets past the line of scrimmage and he cuts that ball loose, you're going to give up a big play because you were trying to keep him contained. You've got to keep Josh Allen contained if you're Kansas City, because if you don't, he will beat you on the ground himself. He's done it to so many teams.
It's not just the fact that he kills you and Josh Allen with his speed, with his legs. It's also the way he runs with power. You saw that last game.
He runs
last touchdown.
Angry.
Oh my gosh.
Like what Kyle Brandt says, he runs angry.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right, let's go ahead and move on over to the other game. Let's go ahead and move over to Eagles and Commanders. I did pick the Eagles, so I just don't see how the Commanders can match up. What are your thoughts on that?
I love Jaden Daniels, and I love what the Commanders have done. The football fan in me wants to see the Commanders win because I like the story. I think we get Jaden Daniels with this underdog team going against Kansas City. Everybody loves to hate Kansas City right now, so it's a David versus Goliath story. It will sell tickets. It will sell ratings.
Yep.
It would be a solid thing for the NFL because honestly, if it's Kansas City and the Eagles in the Super Bowl, nobody's going to care.
We've seen that.
Nobody's going to care.
We've seen that before.
We've seen it before. We've seen it recently, and nobody's going to bet on an Alabama quarterback and Jalen Hurts. So the fan in me wants the Commanders to win, but the analyst in me wants the Eagles to win simply because I don't think the Commanders are ready to face off in the Super Bowl yet. I think they still need a few pieces. And with the curse of Jim Kelly, I don't want that hanging over Jaden Daniels' head yet. Not as a rookie. Let's if they drop this game against the Eagles, sure, this means we're going to watch Kansas City three-peat. Get over it, everybody. But this gives the Commanders to continue to build on what they've been doing and that fantastic front office has been doing, and come back next year ready to brawl. Because right now you can stand in the ring, you can spar, but you need to be ready to brawl before you step into the ring in the Super Bowl against a team like Kansas City or Buffalo. Because whoever wins the AFC is winning the Super Bowl.
My thing with the Eagles, I just don't see how the Commanders can match up. Their secondary can lock up Terry McLaurin. They can lock up Noah Brown, and they don't have to blitz to do it. They can just do it man on man. I like Zach Ertz. He might break away for one score, but I just don't see how with that particular Eagles defense. They're fast. They're a little bit smaller, but they're fast. They're quick. They can definitely cover. My man Jalen Carter is going to eat. He is going to eat.
Yes.
Plus, I don't think that Philly would make the mistake that Tampa Bay did when they tried to cover two, so to speak, with two spies. I don't think that Eagles would do that. I think the Eagles can get away with one, put another man back in coverage. I'm not a fan of Austin Eckler. Brian Robinson Jr., he's okay, but I just don't see how the Commanders win this. I think they're just outmatched. I think Saquon's going to eat, and this will probably be, in my opinion, Saquon and a Devontae Smith game.
Yep.
And I do think the Eagles are going to win this and head back to head on to the Super Bowl. And nothing against the Commanders. If the Commanders win, oh my gosh, this is the greatest story ever.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like the national championship game that we had. If Notre Dame would have won that game, that would have been one of the greatest stories ever. Didn't happen, but it would have been a great story.
And you're right about the flaws that the Commanders have. Like I said, and that's why I expect the Eagles to win. I think that there are some really good pieces on the Commanders, and when you look at the story, you get rid of a piece of scum in Dan Snyder, and your organization just complete 180 in a matter of one season. That would be like if the Cowboys, if Jerry Jones sold the Cowboys and the next year they made the Super Bowl, which I think would be absolutely hilarious, just as a thing, just putting that out into the universe. Like if we could just do that, that would be hilarious.
Yes.
But for the Commanders, you're going to have a hard time stopping Saquon Barkley, who should be. Let's get this clear in case anybody's wondering. Saquon Barkley should be the MVP.
Yep.
There's don't give me this Josh Allen. It should be Saquon. Because Jalen Hurts isn't even the most important player on his team. Just like Lamar Jackson shouldn't be the MVP. He's not even the most important player on his team. The Ravens don't get as far as they did without Derrick Henry. It's just the way that it is. You can throw a bunch of numbers, just watch the games. This should be a year where we're seeing a running back get the MVP, hands down. Unless you want to bring me an argument about Joe Burrow, I would entertain that because I actually am a big fan of Joey B.
Yes.
But
you are.
For the Eagles, you're right. Devontae Smith is going to eat. Saquon Barkley, he's going to eat. Jalen Hurts is an Alabama quarterback, so he's going to throw at least one interception.
Dang, man.
I have not seen an Alabama quarterback yet. Give me a reason to believe it. Nick Saban made skill players, not quarterbacks. It is what it is. But yeah, no, I realistically the Eagles will win that game, but I'm going to be cheering for the Commanders.
Yeah, I just don't see how the Commanders can match up. I just don't see how.
I get it. No, you're right.
I just don't see how. Let me ask you this, and I'm gonna jump back to the Ravens and Bills. You think the Ravens hold on to Mark Andrews? I think if they let him go, they save like I think $11 million versus the cap. You think they hold on to Mark? I think they do.
It depends on what they're going to get if they don't. If you've got, and I think ultimately that's the deal. Like, let's say in some kind of a freak world, they can end up with Zach Ertz. Yeah, I'm moving off of Mark Andrews for Zach Ertz. But the tight end market doesn't really have a lot of selection.
It doesn't, and that's why I think they hold on to him, despite the bad game he had. I think they hold on to him because that 2-point conversion, he makes that catch 9 times out of 10.
He does it. Old Austin or old Mark Andrews does, but I had Mark Andrews on fantasy this year.
I had him too.
He was kind of a liability.
I had him too.
He was kind of a liability for a lot of the season. Like as soon as you bench him, he would do something. You pull him back out, and he's more absent than my father. Like just gone.
Well, to be fair, he was. But to be fair, he was coming in from the season being injured, so it took him a while to get caught up and acclimated. But you saw a lot of usage out of Isaiah Likely this season. A lot of usage. And he proved that he can be capable of toting the rock. Now, Zay Flowers didn't really play this game. But that being said, and you said it before on our show. Um, Todd Monken's the problem.
Yeah.
He's the problem.
If I'm Lamar Jackson, we've seen almost every season in the last few years, Lamar has had frustration with some part of that team. And with good reason. There's been problems with the Ravens. I'm not going to criticize Lamar for voicing his concerns about that. I'm
Yes.
not one of those that thinks a guy should shut up and take it. Lamar is the leader on that team. If anybody's allowed to speak their mind, it's Lamar
It
Jackson.
will be him. Mm-hmm.
He has earned that. Todd Monken is a problem in Baltimore. You're not getting past you last year getting to the AFC Championship was I think the peak of what you're going to get out of Todd Monken, because he chokes at the worst possible time. It has been very clear. The formula for the Ravens to win games has been so clear, Stevie Wonder could call plays. Run the damn ball,
Mm-hmm.
put it in Lamar's hands a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and throw it when they're getting a little too close in the box to make them back up just a step so that you can go back to running the damn ball. The more passes Lamar throws, the lower their win percentage gets. And I don't know if that's just because they don't have a good pass protection for Lamar. I don't know if that's the issue. If it really is that Lamar just isn't a very good quarterback and he's more of a runner, I don't want to try and say that, even though to a point the numbers kind of do point in that direction. But ultimately, with the way that the Ravens look right now, when your quarterback has to be a quarterback, your team loses. I'm looking at Todd Monken right now because to start, and it showed from losing the Chiefs at the start of the season. If they had run the ball more, they would have beat the Chiefs week 1.
Yeah.
That's if they would have run the ball more last week. 0 designed QB runs with Lamar Jackson on your team.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
How it doesn't make any sense to me, and that's Todd Monken shouldn't have a job right now. I would have fired Todd Monken before we got on the plane.
Hey man, I got some bad news.
Like, hey, clear your office. When you get back, clear your office out, clear your locker out, get the hell out the facility.
You go, man. I think he's been the biggest detriment to that team for sure. All right, let's jump into some of these coaching changes that we got going on. We've had two, so we've had a few and a few offensive coordinator hires. The first thing I want to talk about, Ben Johnson, is he the right guy?
Yeah, as long as you put
the
right pieces. Yeah, as long as you put the right pieces around him. Ben Johnson just came and from a master class. You just got done with a master class from Dan Campbell on how to build a culture in a team.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first thing that you do. You have to build a culture in Chicago because there hasn't been one.
Right.
They haven't really had much of an identity, not much of a culture. You need a couple of guys that run their mouth and start to draw some attention and get the blood boiling. You need a couple of those guys on every team. Chicago doesn't have that.
Nope.
You have I know I was very critical of Caleb Williams at the start of the year. The kid has talent. But you have to get a quarterback developing OC in there, because with the fact that this has been Johnson's first head coaching gig, he can't be trying to run the offense completely and running the team as a whole.
Right.
You got to have a solid OC in there. This is why I have advocated for Mike McCarthy to get that job, and I still believe that he would do a great job at it, because then you have two guys that have good experience developing offenses. You've got Mike McCarthy, who has a lot of experience in developing a quarterback. And look at the results we got out of Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy does get to take credit for some of that. You put him there developing Caleb, you are going to get a lot more out of him than you will if you pull in somebody that doesn't have experience developing, because Chicago's problem is they can't develop a quarterback right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make sure that you put people in position that can develop Caleb, or you have wasted another first draft pick. That'll be 3 in a row.
And I said last show that the Bears defense is not that far away
It's not.
um, from where they need to be. Um, the receiving core is good. You got your Keenan Allen's there. You got your DJ Moore there. I love DJ Moore.
Like
Ronald
DJ Moore.
Duznier is there. Love the young kid. So you definitely have some talent there, and I do think I'm not gonna sit here and say I think it's a good hire. You know I am. I'm glass half full. I want to see the results before I can say he was a good, but before I can say he was a right hire. Good hire, yes. Is he the right hire? We have to wait and see on what results.
That's fair.
I'm,
Yeah, that's
I'm
fair.
I'm not gonna be making Loomis look beyond the results. I ain't gonna do none of that. I ain't doing none of that, man. The other hire that sort of kind of because I was looking for him to come back to New Orleans and take us to that next level, but he wanted to be with the Jets. As Aaron Glenn decides to take a
Solid
deal
hire for the Jets.
with the,
Solid hire.
I think it's a good hire too. I don't know if it's the right hire yet because he was a DC, but I think it's a good hire. There's some talent on that Jets roster, particularly if you keep an
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers.
I agree. And I think that the Jets getting Aaron Glenn is why the Jags fired their GM yesterday. Was that Trent Baalke?
I think so.
Because I know his last name is Baalke. I can't remember his first name. And the reason why they fired him was because they found out that he was a large reason why Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn did not give the Jags a second look. There is a lot of talent on that roster.
Mhm.
And now you've seen Aaron Glenn go to a team that has a lot more question marks than the Jags do. Is this good for the Jets? Absolutely. That is probably the best possible scenario for them. That's another that they need to, regardless of who your quarterback is going to be, you need to make a solid choice at OC.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. That offense has no identity whatsoever, with or without Aaron Rodgers. There is no identity on that offense. You have to establish that. The culture has got to change. Aaron Glenn can do that part, but if you don't put in a solid OC in there, Aaron Glenn's going to look just as bad as everybody else has.
It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be real interesting to see what they do. That defense, even though they did take somewhat of a step back due to injury last season, I think they'll be there again. I think they'll be again.
Yeah,
But
that's a top 10 defense if they can actually stay healthy and execute.
But I think the most important thing is the fact that, and this is why I say good hires don't know if they're right hires, because when you're a coordinator, you're just over that part of the team. Now that you're a head coach, you're over all of it.
It's a whole different animal when you're a head coach.
Right. Whole different animal as a head coach.
That's why with all the conversation about Spags, Steve Spagnuolo getting another shot as a head coach. Why should he have to?
Right.
He could be the first head coach to go into he could be the first coach to go into the Hall of Fame as defensive coordinator. Because right now you can't say a word against it with what he's done with Kansas City's defense.
No.
You absolutely cannot. What need does he have to go back to being a head coach with all of that pressure, being forced to take a broken program? Because it's not like there's a program where a coach is just like, I'm just kind of at the end of my rope. I'm done. This program is a championship team. I just don't want to do it anymore. Right. There's none of those jobs open, which is exactly what somebody like Spags deserves. He doesn't need to rebuild a program to prove that he can coach.
Right.
He can coach. He kept Tom Brady from a Super Bowl ring.
He did.
He's gotten Patrick Mahomes. You can give him credit for at least the last ring that Kansas City won.
Right.
So I just, for me, I can't for the life of me see why Spags would take on another head coaching role right now. And there's so many of these programs that are just broken. They're just broken. And then you're going to give that to a guy that doesn't have any experience?
Yeah.
That's the part that concerns me about some of these. Like it's you're setting so many of these guys up for failure. And then you see, like we've talked about on our show at length about how black coaches keep getting screwed because they're only being given broken programs. And if they don't completely turn it around in 1 or 2 years, they're gone.
Yeah.
DeMeco Ryan is probably the exception to that rule right now because Cal McNair absolutely believes in DeMeco Ryan, which he should. DeMeco Ryan's a great coach.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many of these guys that aren't getting a shot to really do what they want, what they should be able to with these teams, because there's either not alignment with the GM or the owner sees some other opportunity to grab a coach that they might want more, and they don't get the fair shot.
Yeah.
So if I'm a coordinator on the cusp right now with that, I don't want one of those jobs.
Yeah. Antonio Pierce shouldn't have been put in that situation in the first place because you didn't have a quarterback. You knew you didn't have a quarterback for him to be successful under. Come on now. You let your best running back go to last season to Green Bay.
Antonio Pierce got screwed by the Atlanta Falcons. When the Atlanta Falcons picked Michael Penix Jr., Antonio Pierce's clock in Vegas started.
That's a good point.
That was it, because had they been able to take Penix, think about the difference in the Raiders squad this year if you have Michael Penix at quarterback instead of Rod Farber or Mustache Minshew. I like Minshew for the personality. When he becomes an analyst, that dude is going to be great.
Yeah,
give me a podcast with Ryan Fitzgerald and Gardner Minshew. I will watch that all day, every day.
Ryan Fitzpatrick and Gardner Minshew. I will watch that all day, every day, because those guys, the personalities, the attitudes, like, I would love to watch those guys. Yes.
But Minshew is not going to have you competitive in the AFC West. Rod Farber is not going to have you competitive in the AFC West. And those were the options that he was given. That wasn't his fault.
Right.
It wasn't his job to make the decision to trade up to make sure that Atlanta couldn't take Penix. But then again, nobody expected Atlanta to take Penix because they had just signed First Cousins to a 4-year deal that they are now going to have to eat 75% of.
Now let's move on over to the New England Patriots, and they just brought back Josh McDaniels to be their OC. That man just won't go away.
Yeah, he's like the herpes of the Northeast. I will say that one of the best things about Josh McDaniels being the coach of the New England Patriots is he's not going to be harassing college girls as often anymore because he's actually going to have real work to do. The only thing that Josh McDaniels,
he definitely has some work to do because that offense is about burying the dead. You got Ramondre Stevenson a year older. You got Drake May. You got Drake May that you can develop, but
yeah,
is McDaniel the right dude to develop him? No,
I don't know, and that's the hard part because McDaniel's system is extremely complicated, and so now you have to go back and you have to hope that Drake May has the intangibles to handle that system, and I hope for Drake May's. I hope for Drake May's sake that he can do that, because I think it just makes for better football when you have quarterbacks that are able to handle what the OC's throwing at them.
Right.
But the only thing that Josh McDaniels can do is be the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. If he does any other job, he's useless. That's like the guy that's really good at being a cashier at Walmart, but if you put him out on the floor, he doesn't know where anything goes. Homeboy can go be a greeter and check your receipt. But if you tell him to go back and hang up and get some stuff hung up in soft line, get some clothes hung up, what does that mean? Where are the hangers at? Like, what are we doing? And that's my biggest frustration with Josh McDaniels. Because very few people get as many chances as Josh McDaniels.
Yes.
Eric Bieniemy, a Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator who had a huge impact in the development of Patrick Mahomes, cannot get an NFL job right now.
Nope.
Josh McDaniels' picture is in the health department of every college in the Northeast. Don't sleep with this guy. Like, why? It doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Like, if anything, we should be looking at a couple of these OC positions for Eric Bieniemy. But because some players don't like the Eric Bieniemy is an old school coach who makes you play hard, and he coaches hard, and he expects you to play hard. Really? Are we that soft now as a sport? Right. That a coach that wants you to play hard and show up on time and learn your playbook and watch your film is too hard of a coach? The Super Bowl ring's just not good enough.
Yeah.
I thought that was the goal of the game.
Me too.
He's focused on team success, not just on individual success, and some players just don't like that.
I agree. All right, let's go ahead and move over to the NBA. I did want to get your take to finish up the show. The Jimmy Butler situation has gotten worse. He's got suspended yet again.
What did he do? I saw he got suspended, but I didn't see. What did he do?
Missed the team flight.
You've worked in call center environments.
Yes.
So you've seen that guy that's got and one currently. So you know what it looks like when that guy's got 1 foot out the door and doesn't give a crap. Doesn't give a care.
Yep.
Almost said a bad word. I stopped myself.
Good job.
Jimmy Butler's out the door. He doesn't care. He's forcing Miami to trade him.
Yeah.
And I actually have a long shot prediction here. And for those of you that don't know, on this show, because maybe you haven't watched the Sports Report, every once in a while I get one of these right.
Yes.
I think the Suns are getting themselves in position to trade for Jimmy Butler. Because the Suns, I'm trying to pull it up right now so I can see it. The Suns recently made a trade that landed them with 3 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
And if Miami's going to move off of a guy like Jimmy Butler.
Hey, Trevor, how you doing this morning, man? Welcome to the stream.
Yeah, why won't they just trade? And I agree, they do need to trade him. I think that he's going to get traded soon. They're not just going to buy him out. So, I think really the thing at this point is they're trying to get the right package together where they can get the most. I've seen stuff flung around online and on different sports sites. It's like 3 and 5 team trades and all of that get Jimmy out of Miami.
We're doing good, man. Thank you for asking.
It's I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see how exactly it goes down, because I don't think outside of like when it was time for LeBron to leave Cleveland the first or second time, or when LeBron left Miami, stuff like that, outside of stuff like that specifically, I don't think we've seen anything in recent history where such a big player was just so adamant about getting out of there. Because, I mean, this isn't like when Ben Simmons wanted out of Philly, because Ben Simmons wasn't anywhere near the player that Jimmy Butler is. I think that this is a case of Jimmy Butler's got 1 foot out the door, and
Simmons to get anything to make it work to get him back. I don't know if he goes back to that organization.
I don't know that he would be willing to go back to that organization. He's got to have a no trade.
I mean, I don't think he has a no trade, but I don't. My only cause for pause on Jimmy is this, because someone asked me the other day that I want to see him back on the Bulls. My call for pause to Jimmy is this: he's what, 35, 36, and he wants money that's going to put him in that upper echelon money. I don't know if you can pay a guy 35, 36 that much amount of money, because he's not going to outplay the contract. In other words, the contract is going to outplay him. And that's my only call for. Still a good player, but I don't know if you want to put that amount of money into somebody of that ilk who's going to be out of the game. What he might have, maybe 1-2 good seasons left. I mean, 35, 36, his body is probably around 40-ish, because He's been a lot around. He's been around a lot of postseason basketball too.
He has. You've got, yeah, like you said, I'm kind of where you're at. 2 to 3 seasons maybe of elite level of elite play left, and that's being optimistic.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of teams that are going to shell out the money. There's not a lot of teams that are going to shell out the money unless it's a team that's a basement team that wants them to sell tickets. Like the Wizards throwing up the money wouldn't surprise me because they've got it to burn.
Yes.
Because they know they're going to sell tickets and people are going to come see Jimmy Butler play. But for teams that are already in the upper half, why?
Right.
Why would you spend the money on a guy that, if he's not happy, is just going to demand his way out again? Like everything that we tried to say LeBron was, as far as a guy that just wants to get out as soon as he doesn't think it's going to go anywhere, that's what Jimmy Butler is doing right now. So you have to wonder about culture impact with this guy now too.
Yeah.
And what are you really going to get out of Jimmy Butler? Are you going to get Philly Jimmy Butler? Or are you going to get end of Miami Jimmy Butler that's already got his foot out the door, doesn't care if he makes it?
Right. To answer your question, though, Trevor, and we talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show. That's it. You can blow up that 76 outside of Maxey. Really, to me, and a couple of the core guys off the bench, you can really blow that team. You can really blow that team up. Embiid needs to go. I've never been the biggest Paul George guy. Never ever have I been a big Paul George. I just don't see it. I don't. And I've never been a big Paul George guy. So they have my permission to blow that team up and start the process all over again. Because I'm still trying to figure out what even made them have that vision to sign Paul George to a deal like that. But I digress. But I just think Jimmy Butler, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to move him and pay him. So even if you move him, if you don't pay him, you get him for the what? Half it all. All-Star break's not quite here. So you get him after the All-Star break, and once you get it, and once the season's over, he may leave you anyway. Because I just don't think there's a team that's gonna pay him money like that and be a winning culture.
If you're trading for Jimmy Butler, it's because you've already got the framework of a deal worked out that he's going to sign where he's going to be staying for a couple of years. This isn't like baseball where you're going to be willing to sacrifice some picks and maybe a bench guy to get him for the rest of the season to get you over the hump to get you to a title. That's not what's going to happen here. So because he's the market, the actual trade market, if Jimmy Butler is going to move, is going to be much higher than a rental player that's meant to swing and be a difference maker.
Right.
So you've got to figure out that you've got to, if you're talking to Miami about a deal, you got to be like, hey, we got to be able to talk to his reps to make sure we can have the framework of a deal worked out so that when we trade for him, we know we can sign him. Because otherwise it's not worth it.
I think the riff is more with Pat Riley than it is with Eric Spoelstra. Pat Riley, and we all know Pat Riley petty. He petty. He is petty. Super petty.
He is.
He's super petty. You've seen that in the past. We've seen that in the past with LeBron. We've seen that in the past with Dwayne Wade. He's just super petty.
Spoelstra waited to sign his coaching extension until after his divorce was finalized to make sure he didn't have to give his ex-wife money.
That's smart, though.
I mean, from a financial side, I get it, but like he's gonna if there's a chance to be petty, Eric Spoelstra is gonna be petty.
He can be petty too. But now that part I don't blame him. That part I don't blame him because that's your money. Gene could come on today because Gene had to work, and I told Gene, "You all right? You cool because you making that money." And at the end of the day, that's all. At the end of the day, look, everybody's not going to be a Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan when he played, he deferred a lot to make sure the Spurs won. He deferred a lot. Now everybody, particularly today's athletes, it's not going to be like that. They're not going to be like that. I hope Jimmy Butler ends up somewhere to where he can play on a nightly basis because he's still a good player. I just don't know if I would be willing to pay that much money for a guy with so much mileage on his body like that.
If he was younger, I think the market would be more viable and the chances of something coming to fruition that's going to benefit both sides or all sides, I guess I should say, all sides would be more possible. But I think Miami's going to have to ride this out because either that or you're going to have to take a trade offer that's much lower than he really would be worth at this point, just so that you can move off of him and still get maybe a second rounder out of him or a couple of bench guys and hope for the best because there's so many question marks surrounding Jimmy Butler that like I don't want the Suns to trade for him. I think they're putting themselves in position to try and make a play for it, but I don't want them to because there's too many question marks.
Yeah. I've seen some stuff out there that has included Bradley Beal in the deal. I know he would have to approve it because I believe he has a no trade contract, no trade clause in his contract. So we'll have to see how that goes. Plus, I don't know what Bill would do in Miami. I'm not sure if he can stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, Bill might be all right. He's used to the East. It's not like Miami is totally bare. You still got Tyler Hero. You still have Bam Adebayo. So Bill might be all right in Miami.
Beal, I think Beal would do better in Miami than he's doing with Phoenix. But I think that part of me wonders the true issue that you have with Beal in Phoenix. I wonder if Jimmy Butler would end up in the same scenario because there's already a lot of weight in that starting lineup for the Suns. So are you so Beal's most useful spot is your sixth man. Are you gonna tell me that you're gonna sacrifice multiple first round picks for and $35 to $40 million a year for a guy that's gonna be your sixth man? Are you gonna put Butler in that same position? Or are you gonna move off the starting lineup if you're the Suns for Jimmy Butler?
Right.
Because you can't just move off of Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, that's your big.
They need, particularly the Suns. They need every bid they can get.
Exactly. So, what are you going to start using KD as your big?
No, that won't work.
You're gonna try and get DeAndre Ayton back. That's what you're gonna do. The softest big in the league. I just, and that's the hard thing for me with the Suns looking at Butler is he doesn't fill the needs that the Suns have.
Right.
So who actually has the ability to have legitimate use for Jimmy Butler if he goes out of Miami?
Right.
That's my question. And then I would start from there and see how you can build a trade package from that starting point versus the throwing spaghetti at the wall in these 3 and 5 trade deals that keep getting floated around on sports sites because none of them are going to work.
Right. We'll see what happens. We definitely see what happens in that situation there. All right, my friend, we have come upon the end of the show. Anything you want to get out there? Anything you want to plug before we get on out here, Seven?
Catch me on Monday nights with this guy right here, Sports Report, 10 p.m. Eastern. Sports Report podcast on YouTube. Check us out. Other than that, man, go Chiefs.
All right. I want to say thank you to everybody out there watching this show. We do appreciate you being on. Do appreciate you, everybody in TV land. This has been Wire to Wire Sports, Coffee and Sports in the Morning. We'll see you guys next week. Have a great week. Have a safe week and take care.